Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. It is said that in the 7th year of married life, the first real serious crisis in the relationship occurs. Almost all married couples know this. But ask them, where does this information come from? Few will say anything intelligible. That's just the way it is. And many people are waiting for this 7th anniversary to prepare themselves for a challenge. Often by this time, the first child is just beginning to go to school, stops asking his endless questions, and for the first time the family has a little more free time than it was before. Quite a bit more, but it is quite tangible. Unless, of course, the first child is not followed by a second, and even a third. The family was just in their 7th year together, the only difference being that they still had not decided to have children. They got married in the first year of the Textile Institute and happily lived a carefree student life. Then Liam, as her husband's name was, left for a whole number of years abroad to gain experience as a chief of a limited shop. And Lisa went to graduate school. When Liam finally returned, almost trying, gray and brown from tanning, and Lisa gave up teaching in the department and got a job as a technologist in a big sewing firm. That fateful 7th year, and caught them. And just at the moment when they are seriously thinking about a child. So far, only theoretically. But practice makes perfect sense. Now Liam and Lisa could spend entire evenings together. It was as if they were repeating a period that they had never had much time for in the first year they had met. They became regulars at cinemas and restaurants, invited a few friends, and tried to visit them themselves on holidays. In general, it was as if they got to know each other anew, only now with a real ground under their feet in the form of a stable job. And not dreaming, but clearly planning their prospects for October, even bought a trip to Hurghada, and was looking forward to the fall. Lisa had never been to the sea before, and Liam had only seen the Caspian Sea, and even that was only briefly, and in conditions far from unemployed bathing and lying on a sandy beach. Green leaves are rustling outside the window. August, soon and cold, and winter short, dreary days and long evenings. She hadn't liked winter since she was a little girl, especially after she had frostbitten her ears off at the age of 12. So even the surgeons wanted to intervene. Thank God everything turned out well. But she was really scared when she was young. How can girls be without ears? No earrings to wear. They'd call her a scarecrow. No, winter is not for her. Liam, on the other hand, loved winter. Especially appreciated the opportunity to go skiing. For Lisa, skiing was a punishment, but she had to keep her husband company. Especially since she had no other way to keep fit in winter. Exercise bike, bought a couple of years ago, turned, as it often happens, hanger for laundry. And going to fitness clubs, Lisa was embarrassed. Too many men would pay attention to her. She tried not to lose her looks, and she looked superb in her 25. However, by the beginning of September, having watched all the interesting films, tried all the dishes in the restaurants, and having managed to bore their friends, the couple suddenly became bored. Somehow, imperceptibly, they approached this one. It turned out that the lack of free time had its pluses. And what does a person do when he has no apparent problems? That's right, he begins to create these problems for himself. With the shrewdness of a detective, he looks for any excuse, around which, like a drop of water around a speck of dust, he can build up his motives and exclaim, "Aha, don't you want to explain me?" And so on and so forth. Oh, that man. He can't sit still and is drawn to get into some kind of story with a tear. It was pretty typical in that sense. She immediately wanted to share the guilt with her husband. Why has her Liam become so silent? Why couldn't he think of anything to cheer them up again? And he started staying late at work, first for half an hour, then an hour, and by September, as much as 2. Where does he disappear to in the evenings? And on whom does he spend his former enthusiasm? Hasn't he got a mistress already? A silly thought, of course. Why should he have a mistress? Well, they're tired of the freedom they're not used to, It's understandable with all childless families. It happens from time to time. However, the sillier the first doubt, the more solid it is in the head. Another day, another week. And so it goes. Stupidity turns into conviction. Yeah, that's the way it is. Exactly. Liam found someone on the side. In the early days, when suspicion first built its first stronghold, Lisa tried to ask her husband directly if he was having an affair, but she never dared. Maybe she didn't even dare because it would have been too easy. Then she listened to his phone conversations when he picked up the phone and left for the kitchen. As soon as he disappeared into the shower, Lisa would go through his call history and search his contacts for women's names. She found quite a few in the phone. But what's the big deal? He is, after all, the head of the limit shop, and there, wherever you poke everywhere, there are only girls. But he talked to one of them. Too often she was listed in the phone as Jenna, and all 10, 20 minutes on the line. Is it really possible to talk that much time on the workplace? Lisa, for example, has only 3 men in her contacts. Liam himself, then the director of the firm, and 1 young manager with whom she had to communicate purely on job duties. And she did not return phone calls with any of them after work. No need for her to erase Liam on her shirt. Lisa, almost under a magnifying glass, began to look for traces of his crimes. That hair is found clearly not her. The smell is not her perfume. At least there was no trace of lipstick. Otherwise, it would have looked like a movie. But it makes sense. She's got a mistress. There is a goat. We're also going on a trip in October. We must do something urgently. Otherwise, they will steal her husband. And she didn't want to lose him. She loved him. She was jealous because she loved him and didn't want to share him with anyone else. Lisa did not follow Liam, did not go to a private detective. She didn't even call that Jenna, even though she tried to at first. She decided to teach her husband a lesson, to make him nervous, to feel jealous that she alone that should suffer. First started calling in the evenings to the manager, coming up with some excuse. Then at the very top left her phone before she was stuck in the shower for a long time. But Liam didn't respond to that. But he did. The guy then was young and hot. And God hadn't hurt Lisa's looks. The young man really believed that his colleague wanted something from him beyond the business relationship and began to take the unexpected initiative. Lisa, of course, was afraid of such a turn. She did not plan any serious relationship on the side. However, it was necessary to use heavy artillery. Liam didn't get through. Lisa was stunned. Lived next door to them in the apartment across the street. A lonely neighbor 2 or 3 years older than Lisa called him John. With Lisa he was always friendly, smiling and cheerful. But he never crossed the boundaries of decency and conversation. He did not give away his desire to get to know his neighbor. Lisa had always liked him. From the first day she and Liam had moved into the house, it had been easy for them to get along. It was as if they had known each other 100 years before. However, Lisa's sympathy was more platonic and purely spiritual, as if she was communicating with her own brother for nothing more. Neither did she ever think. They met occasionally at lunchtime, in the cafe across the street from her work. They'd sit around the same table and have a nice conversation about all sorts of trivia, and Lisa, once the thought of heavy artillery suddenly seemed quite appropriate and harmless, if she asked exactly John to play a play on her, to finally get through to Liam. For real jealousy, the neighbor thought she might well fit for the part. He seemed to her restrained, moderately gallant, and yet not at all prude. Unlike the manager at work, he already had a strong core. And therefore, in Lisa's opinion, it was not necessary to expect any unforeseen antics from him. She began to wait for an opportunity to have a conversation with her neighbor on such a sensitive subject, and the occasion did not fail by mid-September. A light southerly breeze was blowing the last yellowed leaves off the poplars. Indian summer came on time. The city glistened with colors, glittered, and lay down the windows of shop windows, reflecting the bright sun on the streets. Deafening echoed distant train whistles, rumbling streetcars, and the rumble of people's voices. Boredom of the first autumn days for a time gave way to a spontaneous burst of mischief in Lisa's soul. Now she lingered long hours at the cafe to meet John again. And very soon he was there, and it was Lisa who first noticed her. "Hello," he exclaimed. "Hello, John." She takes a seat. "It's good to have met you. Is there something to talk about?" Lisa decided to unleash her plans on him at once, without prior preparation. From her point of view, this preparation had been going on for a week, while she waited in the cafe for her neighbor, who, as bad luck would have it, did not come for lunch. But he's a tough guy, and she thought she could do without foreplay. John placed himself with his tray, opposite, and looked intently at Lisa. "And what are we talking about?" he asked. "You may be surprised that I'm going to start so soon. Well, my relationship with my husband, Liam, is kind of deadlocked. Not that we quarreled and somehow explicitly expressed complaints about each other. Nothing like that. Everything looks good from the outside. You can't tell. But I know that something is not right. It's just a matter of life." "I get it," John interrupted. "I don't know what it's about. Do you need help?" John was surprised. "What kind of help?" "Don't be frightened. The kind that would make him jealous of you. I'm afraid he's got someone on the side." "Now you're getting carried away," John grinned. He took a sip of soup from his bowl. "I'm not the shy type, of course, but I have to admit, you surprised me. And why did you choose me for that role?" "There's no one else. Who would I share it with? We have mutual acquaintances." "Of course we do, but I don't think it's a secret to Liam for very long. I'm sorry to be blunt, but there's no other way to explain it. Maybe I was wrong, but I always thought our buddy relationship was special and sincere. But if you say no, I know it's a fool's errand, no offense intended, but there's no other way, believe me. Liam doesn't respond to any hints. You see, there's something solid that's right in front of my eyes. I'm sorry if I'm being silly." "To what, John?" He looked more and more closely at Lisa, as if he were discovering her in a new way. "From a more interesting side. I don't mind. Especially since I'm going on vacation on Monday, and I haven't thought of anything to do yet. You know, when I was a kid, I used to do school theater, and I seriously thought about going to college to study theater after graduation. To shake up the old days, as they call it." "Really?" Lisa was delighted with this turn of events. "Why didn't you enter?" "Scared at the very last moment. I was already standing in a college, ready for the first audition. And suddenly, I panicked all the text I was studying. It flew out of my head, only scraps were left. And I ran away. And then I was ashamed of my cowardice. I thought, what kind of actor am I if I do not know how to control myself in the right moment?" "It's a pity," held out Lisa. "You are very easy in communication. It is evidently some gift. Maybe that's what an actor needs." "You don't say." John started on the second course, and after that he went to boxing to train his character. He grinned again. "I trained so hard that I was once the regional middleweight champion. Don't think I'm just bragging, by the way. Straight from the ship to the ball. And then I didn't try it again with acting. No, then I had no money. A job search, a failed marriage, depression, no money again, and a job. All in all, life got sucked up to the max. And why did you and your wife split up?" "I just gave up on John. It's his own fault. I don't even want to remember. It was a stupid thing to do. Unforgivable stupidity. But the past is long gone." "I see. I'm sorry I asked." "Okay, forget it. So what's your plan?" And Lisa told John everything she had been working on in her head lately. There were several options, from the most brutal, when Liam catches them in bed together, to harmless mild flirting, just to get her husband's attention. They decided to choose a middle ground between the two extremes, so that in the course of the play to be able to somehow regulate the situation in either direction. Though, to be honest, when it came to the subject of bed, John's eyes lit up only for a second. But Lisa noticed it. And so one night, when Liam was staring at the television with a beer in his hand, watching the Lakers game, Lisa decided to go ahead with her plan. She hadn't noticed his interest in basketball before. If skiing or biathlon is another matter. But for basketball, Liam said to her husband, "I'm going next door for a minute." Liam turned around to where? Surprised, he asked the neighbor to John. "They say he is good at electronics. There is something wrong with my laptop. I can't turn it on for 2 days. So why didn't you tell me? I would have taken it to the service. I have no time for services. I have an urgent need to finalize the document and send it to the customer. I have a long time till Monday. And I don't want to have to put everything together at work first. And John is the one in the apartment across the street." Yes, that Liam fought for a second. It seemed that the first seeds of doubt had been carefully planted in his head. All right then, one step at a time. Might be able to deal with his thick skin. "Okay, go," he finally said, and he turned back to the screen. Lisa had only been at John's for half an hour that night. It was important not to overdo it the first time her laptop was really a bit malfunctioning. John managed to fix it in 10 minutes, but Lisa did not take the laptop, so that there was still an excuse to come back in 2 days. The whole next day, which came on Sunday, she watched her husband out of the corner of her eye. She hoped Liam would ask something about the neighbor, but he remained silent, like a partisan. Did this first step of plans have any effect on him or not? In the evening, Lisa could not resist and decided to go to John early, and this time stayed there for an hour. When she returned home with her laptop, her husband was sitting in the kitchen, cooking. "How was it?" he asked, coming out to Lisa in the room. "How did you fix the laptop?" "We fixed it." "And what have you been doing there for an hour?" "It was about time to put the gas on," thought Lisa. "So we sat, talking about things." She smiled enigmatically. "I wonder," Liam squinted. "How did you have so many topics in common for an hour? You know him so well, don't you?" "Our neighbors were getting more and more excited," Liam answered. "Only one word in common. Hello." It never got any further than that. "So you got more and more into the silent treatment in the evenings. You're more interested in talking to someone on the phone than exchanging a few words with your wife, who you love or who you don't love. What's that supposed to mean?" Liam got indignant. "Are you implying something?" "No, I'm just stating the facts." "What facts?" "That you stopped paying attention to me, like you used to. That's a fact. Number one. And who is this Jenna that you talk to for 20 minutes at a time? That's fact number two. Or do you disagree with that? Are you going through my phone? Don't leave it lying around. And I need to know what's going on with you eventually." "That's interesting. You should call her. Make her laugh." "I will. If you have to. Right now. And call here." Liam held out his phone to her. "Stop it," waved him off Lisa. Her game had gotten a little too fast. She had to pull herself together. The important thing was that the reaction had begun, which meant that her and John's plan was working. "So stop it." Liam wouldn't let it go. "Jenna's having some health problems right now. And if you knew how old she was, you'd say something like that. All right, calm down. The food's already burning." There was a real smell in the kitchen, burning oil. "Oh." Liam rushed to the stove and turned off the gas. There was no one left to cook dinner. It came from the kitchen. "She's used to restaurants. I don't give her my full attention. I left half my salary at the movies in Italian pubs. Who's going to pay attention to me? Is it more interesting with a neighbor? Probably everyone. Calm down. I'm going to bed. My head hurts. And go, go, go." And Lisa went into the bedroom, one half of her face smiling, and the other half sad with excessive stage breath. "Next time we must be more careful." But all of a sudden the spouse burst out. Probably saved up a long species, just did not show it. But the next time in the next 3 days did not happen. Liam went back to work, began to stay even longer. Has he resigned himself to the fact that Lisa had someone on the side too? Or maybe it was to his advantage. Maybe that was what he wanted. Lisa's heart was growing uneasy. She must find out for certain who her rival was and give her the prophylactic treatment she needed. She wouldn't give up that easily. Jenna, as Lisa learned through her work channels, was indeed an old woman from the personnel department of Liam's factory. Lisa had no complaints about her, of course, so we must look elsewhere. It was unlikely that Liam would have flirted openly with any of the younger people in administration, much less the marginal shop floor. Rumors of this would have carried quickly, or they would certainly have been reported. Well-wishers, which in such cases are always in abundance, but everyone in the entourage was silent. Nothing was hinted at or questioned that might seem strange or inappropriate. Lisa stopped her frank visits to her neighbor in the evenings, but she didn't abandon the plan, just made some adjustments to it. She took some time off work, citing urgent matters, and asked John to help her track down where her husband went after the factory. John had a car. On Thursday evening, just before the end of their shift, Lisa and John waited for Liam to come out of the gatehouse. He came out at exactly 5:10 p.m. and headed toward the bus stop. He was in no hurry to get his own car because he didn't have much need to drive it anywhere. When the bus arrived, Liam hopped on it and headed across town to the area where the one-story wooden buildings had begun. John and Lisa followed him. "We don't know anyone in this neck of the woods," said the girl, as if to herself. "Don't jump to conclusions," said John. "Soon you will see for yourself." And I do not envy you." "And what to do?" said Lisa in reply. "You can't just leave it to chance, can you?" "Was my hunch right?" "It would have been better," said John. "This had better be the house of the woman you spoke of, Jenna." "Yeah, well, let's see." "Hardly," sighed the girl. The bus stopped at the terminus. From there it was already beginning to be a good weedy field and woodland plantings. Liam got out the back door and looked around as if he was looking for someone or afraid he was being followed. John and Lisa jumped to keep out of his way. They were too close to the bus stop. Surely Liam had no idea anyone would think of following him, and it appeared that he was afraid of something. Lisa cautiously lifted her head to look. She barely had time to find Liam. He was already standing on the porch of the house at the edge of the field, embracing, looking into the eyes of some girl who came out to meet him. In a second, they were already hidden in the house. But where was he? Following Lisa's lead, he pulled up. And John, too. Sheriff missed with his eyes around the neighborhood. "Not in a frustrated voice," said Lisa. They did not. "And where?" "At the edge of the house. In the backwoods, making out with some chick." "No way. I'm sure I'm not blind. I saw it with my own eyes." "You wish you hadn't, but did the woman find out?" "No, but it happened so fast. I didn't get a good look. So that's how it happened after all," sighed John. "I'm sorry." Lisa kept silent. Her eyes sparkled with hurt tears. How could it be so? Liam, why all of a sudden? What had she done wrong? What had she done wrong to him? It had been all right for 7 years. But yes, we got a little bored out of our common interests. But that happens to everybody. You have to look for compromises, come to an agreement, come up with something new, and not look for it on the side. No, she couldn't find fault with herself. And besides, she's a woman. It's a man's responsibility to be creative. Liam was supposed to look for and suggest options. The resentment grew like a snowball. Lisa tried to open the door and rushed into that house right away to find out for sure who this mistress was and why Liam was punishing her like that. But John held her back. "Come on," he said confidently. "You're in such a state now, you're only going to make a mess of things. Now is the time to calm down and analyze the situation." "What's there to analyze?" Lisa sniffed her nose and said, "It's as clear as day." "You know it. It may as well be clear." John continued to insist. "But please, let's not end this now." "When?" "I don't know. Let's just go home now, and you'll calm down. Weigh the pros and cons one more time. And then you can do whatever you want." "What do you mean?" Lisa's up in arms. "You're breaking up with me. Why am I dumping you? You tell me to do whatever you want. But you're what?" "Lisa." John grinned. I didn't mean anything by it. Don't worry, I'm with you all the way. Maybe I didn't mean it right. Okay, Lisa wiped the rest of the tears from her face. And you're dead in a handkerchief. Let's go. I guess you're right. I'm sorry I came at you with a whole bunch of flare-ups before I changed my mind again. John turned the car around, and they rolled back into town straight to their apartment. Lisa did not want to. She would walk there from corner to corner. She was in agony, looking at the clock, waiting for Liam, and in that time she could make so much nonsense in her head that it was scary to think. John was quite aware of that, too, so he invited Lisa to his place. They sat there for 2 hours, trying to figure out what to do next. One way or another, the situation develops. It jumps to topics completely unrelated to it. 3 times they drank tea, even laughed at one of the stories that John told. In general, they somehow forgot about time. Eventually, it came down to chess. Lisa turned out to be a fan of that game and even won one of the 2 games against John. Until, at last, Liam called her on the telephone. Lisa didn't answer the phone. She looked at her watch, groaned, and hurried home, thanking John for today. Opening the door and stepping into the hallway, Lisa experienced an influx of conflicting feelings. On the one hand, she needed some excuse for being away for so long, but she didn't feel like it. And on the other, she was tempted to ask Liam right from the doorstep about the woman he had been visiting. But it was not worth doing yet. Such a dilemma, with no possibility of being unsolvable, completely confused her, and she was ready to burst into tears again, to drown out her resentment with tears. Lisa took off her shoes, a light jacket, and opened the bathroom door to wash. But as she took a step there, she felt warm water under her feet. There was a washing machine running in the bathroom, which surprised her, since Liam had never even touched it before. Not that he had ever done his own laundry without knowing all the nuances. He forgot to put the drain hose in the shower stall, and streams of murky foamy water scattered all over the floor. Yeah, he probably didn't realize that hose existed. At one time, they didn't install the drain directly down the drain like almost everyone in their kitchens did. Lisa cursed, threw off her dress, turned off the machine, grabbed a rag, and began to remove the water. How else the downstairs neighbors haven't come yet? They must have already drowned them. Liam came running when he heard the commotion in the bathroom. For a few seconds, he stared with round eyes at the picture in front of him. Then he realized and rushed to help Lisa. "What on earth were you thinking of doing the laundry for?" she exclaimed. What was so urgent? Decided it was time to learn a new skill. Panting, clutching the rags in the toilet, Liam answered, "Thought I'd come in handy." "What kind of nonsense is that? What are you talking about?" "You don't know. Don't bother. Or you could have asked me about the drain hose in the cabin first. I was calling myself. I don't give a damn about my husband. He doesn't pick up the phone for dinner. He doesn't cook. He's done so much laundry all week. In the evenings, he's out in the middle of nowhere. You're allowed to be at work till 8. Your wife should stay at home and wash your shirts. That's why I'm learning skills. Yeah, I messed up a little bit. First time's a charm. Yeah, now I have to learn a new skill. It's called dealing with neighbors who have a stretch ceiling. Don't worry, I learned at one too. One of the neighbors, by the way, should have been talked to a long time ago." Yes, grinned Lisa. "Talk to everybody in the staircase. Maybe. What interesting will tell too." "Why you smirked?" "I will. I'm asking. The whole washing machine disaster. Something about it cheered Lisa up. She's already forgotten. And her confusion. And the resentment seems to have completely evaporated. Pushing each other and deftly wielding the rags, it was as if the couple were competing to see who could squeeze the most water in a minute. Liam, too, was transmitted by Lisa's cheerfulness. He laughed and said nothing more, but looked at his wife strangely, as if she were without a dress. He was seeing her for the first time. Lisa noticed this look in his eyes and tried to make her movements even more frankly seductive. She had been missing love lately, and they were beginning to have problems with it. further convincing Lisa of her suspicions. And then such a sudden impulse seized them both that they could not contain themselves, leaving wet footprints on the parquet. They almost danced all the way to the bedroom and continued cuddling there, laughing and throwing pillows on the floor. They kissed each other and didn't immediately hear the doorbell ring. Then the doorbell rang again, and they began to knock insistently and loudly. It must have been the neighbors. Lisa whispered, "What about your skills?" "I don't care," Liam said. "I'll practice tomorrow morning." But it was a rough morning. As if she were hungover, Lisa got up early to prepare breakfast. Everything fell out of her hands. Her soul creaked close to the cat. A little later, Liam came into the kitchen, gave her a duty kiss, and did not utter a word until she left for work. Though it was strange to see such a start to a new day. But nothing came to Lisa's mind, either, that she could say. As if everything was clear without words. Regarding yesterday, it was clear, but concerning the future, everything was confused. Lisa felt even more ashamed of her yesterday's impulse. It blurred all her plans, made her game, probably, unbelievable in Liam's eyes, because against the background of what had happened yesterday, her game just paled. But Liam, too, showed his real feelings, albeit briefly, and there could be no real doubt about it. But there was no sense of joy in that either. Yesterday's picture, which Lisa saw from John's car, stood before her eyes, obscuring all common sense. Who was this woman? Such is Liam's behavior, both yours and ours. It didn't suit Lisa at all. It looked even worse than if he had just fallen out of love with her and gone to someone else to be in the second role. Let it be even in the first role, but having someone else as a constant rival was disgusting. She won't go for that under any circumstances. It's time to stop this pointless game and put an end to this chorus. Lisa decided to visit the Blue House, where all her questions were answered. Of course, I had to talk to the neighbors downstairs and apologize. Liam, of course, forgot about his promise yesterday. The conversation was not a pleasant one, but a lot of damage was done. Tight ceilings with the neighbor's bathroom did not get, so we scolded the neighbors a little bit, and we didn't demand any compensation. But the mood spoiled even more, just enough to visit her husband's mistress. John this time, Lisa decided not to bother anymore because she did not want him to see her so upset. The weather outside began to deteriorate. The north wind blew in. The sky was covered with high clouds. The sun was a pale speck barely shining through the gray veil. Lisa felt sick as she shook in the overcrowded, rushing people on the bus to work. It seemed to her that she had been traveling for an eternity. So she wanted to get rid of all the unpleasant secrets of an unfaithful spouse as soon as possible. There was little chance of catching Liam's mistress at home at that hour. Most people were at work or asleep after the night shift. Lisa understood that, but she could not restrain herself. If she had to, she would wait on the porch until nightfall. Lisa did not find a bell on the door, so she knocked first at the door, and then at the window. At last, she heard some movement in the house, and the door swung open. A young girl, a little younger than Lisa, stood before her eyes. Pretty, fair-haired, gray-eyed, of short stature. She wore only a house robe and fluffy slippers. With one hand, she held up the robe to hide her breasts, and the other kept leaning forward with her whole body against the doorknob. "Who do you want?" she asked a little frowningly. "You, I think." I could hear the threat and pressure in Lisa's first words. She cocked her eyebrows and grinned slightly. She showed that she was not at all discouraged by Lisa's pressure and that she was ready to fend off any attack. "Do I know you?" she clarified. I guess she was beginning to guess what kind of guests were on her doorstep, and I had come to meet them. Lisa answered a little more calmly. "Let me go. Otherwise my conversation with you may not be so short." "Well, come on." The girl shied away, letting Lisa inside the house. Inside the house was warm and comfortable. There was a real stove. Lisa had seen such stove only in the childhood when she visited her grandmother. The door was open and coals poured inside. On the electric stove, the kettle was whistling. "I will not offer coffee," said the hostess. "Move the kettle from the stove to a ceramic stand." "I don't think that's why you came. I only came to ask one question. Tell me, please, what is your relationship with my husband?" "I see," smiled the girl. "By the way, we have not yet met. And you're already with these questions. You must be Lisa." "Yes, Lisa. And my name is Maria." "I don't care. Just answer me a question." Maria sat down on a stool by the table and twirled her empty cup in her hand, wondering where to begin. "I've been waiting for your visit," she said at last. "But I didn't see it coming so soon," and impatiently Lisa interrupted her. "And I'm glad it's going to end sooner than Liam and I planned. What's going to end it all?" Maria fluttered her hands. "The game." "What other game?" "You are certain that I am your husband's mistress. That's what you came to hear me say, but I am not." "Don't bullshit me. What else do you mean by your meetings and attention on the porch? I saw you together yesterday. Tell me you're his cousin or the sick one. Maybe like Jenna. Can you please tell me how caring my husband is? Just not the boss of the marginal one. And Mother Teresa? No, not a sister. And quite healthy. And the fact that you saw us yesterday is what Liam and I wanted. That was the plan." "What was?" "Okay, Jesus, my head is spinning. Maria, what's not to understand? That's what Liam wanted, for you to get jealous." "What was that for?" "Because it seemed to him that you had someone on the side. So he asked me to play along. We work together, and he's known me since we were kids. We went to high school together. Only I'm a little younger than him. I'm on vacation, and my husband's on a business trip. Yeah, he knows about this whole thing too. He and Liam know each other." Lisa froze, even forgetting what she'd wanted to say before, engrossed in her own game. She couldn't imagine that Liam could have had the exact same idea. Was Maria telling the truth? But why would Liam suddenly think she was cheating on him? Had she ever once given him such an excuse? Well, no, of course it looked that way to John. But that was after her husband himself had begun to show signs of his own infidelity. Before that, she just got bored and spent a little less time in the kitchen, got tired quickly, and almost ceased to be interested in her husband's affairs. Yes, and the list in general is not insignificant, and now tried to figure out which of them was the first to change so much. She didn't have a good reason to be jealous either, and he didn't get caught red-handed a couple of times. Liam was at work longer than usual, so why panic and think? God knows what. This is a real oversight. I see you understand at last. Maria interrupted her thoughts. "I'm sorry," Lisa said quietly and sank down on the stool as well. "I don't know how I would react if I were you." "Sorry for what?" "It's you. Excuse me for interfering. Even if it's just for fun, your attitude. I know from my own experience that this is a thankless task. A sweet tooth is a sweetheart's swear word. So they say from now on it's up to you." "Well, that was a silly thing to do," Lisa sighed. "Shall we go for coffee?" "It would be good." Maria agreed and took the second cup from the shelf. They talked a long time. Lisa told Maria about John, about Jenna, about the upcoming trip, and even about her plans for the baby. By the end of the conversation, they were so candid that Maria confessed to Lisa that she had lied a little bit about her husband. "He's not on any business trip," she said. "We divorced him 3 months ago. Why didn't you say so in the first place?" Lisa asked. "I was afraid to. You wouldn't believe it. It wasn't real with me and Liam. At first, he was just being supportive. I was going through a bad divorce, and he was just being friendly. He's always been like that since high school. He'd come to my rescue like a friend. He was a gold mine, not a man. Then he told me about his problem, that he suspected you of cheating on him. You know, I felt so bad for him. I thought, how is it possible to cheat on such a husband? So I came up with this whole show. I could hardly convince him. I couldn't save my own family. So at least I decided to help yours. And I'm so glad it's different for you. Even though it's funny, it's better with my Andrew. Unfortunately, Everything was in real agreement, concluded Lisa, getting the last cup of coffee. I can't imagine what I would have done without Liam. You're doing just fine, and things are bound to get better for you too. It was as if a mountain had been lifted from Lisa's shoulders, and she was no longer hammered, and her mood immediately improved. Even the weather, as if her inner state by lunchtime had already gone wild. The sun peeked out from behind the clouds from time to time and gave the last warmth to the city. There was no hurry now. I did not want to go home. Iz got all worked up while she waited for her husband from work to tell him everything and explain her own behavior. She went to her favorite cafe for lunch, then ran to the stores, remembering that there was already a lot missing from the fridge for proper cooking. It wasn't until 4 p.m. that she walked into the entryway and up to her pad. I should have still warned John that the game was over. Of course, it is a pity that he did not manage to get into the role of suitors. But the goal, no matter how you look at it, was still achieved. Liam showed, jealous even earlier than the first. Lisa noticed her. She wanted to take the groceries home first and then run into John for a little while. But as she opened the door of her apartment, she froze on the threshold. From the kitchen, she heard men's voices. One voice belonged to Liam and the other to John. What on earth was that all about? Lisa flustered, threw the bags in the hallway, took off her shoes, and headed toward the men. They were sitting at the table, drinking beer loudly, discussing something, laughing, and not noticing the sudden Lisa. Under her husband's eye, Lisa noticed a bruise. "And what is our celebration?" she asked, to draw attention to herself. "Oh, close." "Hello," Liam exclaimed happily. "Hello, Lisa." John said hello to her too. "Why are you here so early?" her husband asked. "I saw you didn't stay long either." "Today," the girl answered. "I am still worried." "Yes, I took the day off today," her husband answered. "So, what are you guys celebrating? And what's that under your eye?" "Yeah, it just happened," Liam said. It's a bad way to start a conversation with John. "Did you know he's the regional boxing champion?" Wait, shook his head. "Lisa, what conversation? Holy shit, is this about me?" "Calm down. We got it all figured out. And now I know all about your play, which you have planned." "You wouldn't believe it," Liam laughed. "I wanted to do the same thing with you, didn't I?" "Yeah, I know I'm done." His wife interrupted him. "Me too, with your friend." Lisa pictured in the air. Lisa did air quotes with Maria. Liam was surprised. "Yes, she told you," told Liam. Liam laughed even harder. John only smiled, but maybe a little sadly, remembering something of his own. Or maybe he was sorry the game was over before it had even begun. "We're such fools, Lisa," Liam said with regret. "Why are you standing there? Come on, sit down with us. We should celebrate Fool's Day." "What's the occasion today? Why don't you have a snack?" Lisa got excited. "Hold on, I'll just put something on the table. Vaughn's got it." "Listen," Liam got up. "You should invite Maria too. She has something to do with the party too. It wouldn't be fair. What do you say? Give her a call." "What do you say?" "Really?" Lisa agreed. "We only had coffee with her. But I see the feast is gaining serious momentum," John remarked. "Then, if you allow me, I'll bring something to the table too." "Come on, John," said Lisa with a smile. "Well, we do." Life played with other colors. Liam exclaimed. "That's for sure." Lisa agreed and hugged her husband. But that was not the end of the story. Maria joined their company, and within a week she was with John. It was time to go to the sea. But off they went. Liam and Lisa were no longer alone. John and Maria went with them on their trip. And everything was fine. And when they returned home, a year later, Lisa gave birth to a healthy, smiling baby girl, whom she and Liam decided to name Maria, both in honor of the sea that had inspired Lisa's daughter's name, and in honor of their mutual friend who had participated in saving their past relationship. Finally, a long-awaited full-fledged happiness came to their family. but their 7th year of married life will always be remembered with a smile.